Tem um momento na carreira que precisamos dar um passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
E aí, galera, no podcast de hoje vamos falar de...
Ninguém precisa passar por isso hoje em dia. Tá com gases? Luftal. Ele age rapidinho, em 10 minutos, aliviando a dor e estufamento dos gases e evitando o pum. Porque desfaz os gases ainda na barriga. Chega de passar dor e constrangimento por conta disso.
Bora gravar de novo que agora eu tô pronto.
Luftal Simeticona, indicado para pacientes com excesso de gases no aparelho digestivo. Se persistirem os sintomas, o médico deverá ser consultado. Dezembro de 2024.
Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Does it feel like your whole world has just been turned upside down? Are you having trouble remembering to drink water or eat? Does it feel like you're walking in quicksand? You can't even concentrate on normal things? You may be walking through trauma. There may be a crisis in your life or in your government that is causing you to feel that you don't know how to put one foot in front of the other. I have walked through times like this, and it really has helped me to walk with a professional therapist through these times. I highly encourage you to find a therapist, and at betterhelp.com/difference, you can get 10% off your first month today. I myself have benefited from a therapist I've worked with there. You can message your therapist in between sessions, go to extra courses around grief or trauma, find support groups, and also really have a person to help you walk through some of the most difficult parts of your life right now. You can get 10% off your first month today by going to www.betterhelp.com/difference. You deserve to heal. Today we have Kristen Revell, the executive recruiter of the Revell Group and host of 2 podcasts, Curiosity with Kristen and Where Next? Travel with Kristen and Carol. Kristen Revell is the president and founder of the Revell Group, a San Francisco area-based firm specializing in executive search and recruitment services. Since founding the company in May 2020, she's leveraged over 2 decades of expertise to deliver tailored solutions for clients seeking top-tier talent. But before establishing her own firm, had a distinguished 22-year career with Robert Half, where she had several leadership roles. As VP Director of Strategic Accounts, she managed nationwide client portfolios, negotiated contracts, and drove revenue growth. Kristen also spearheaded the development of a nationwide training program for a new division, showcasing her aptitude for curriculum design and cross-functional collaboration. Her tenure at Robert Half included serving as a recruiting manager and VP for finance and accounting, where she specialized in placing professionals from staff to C-suite levels. She's really great at connecting good organizations with exceptional talent and fostering long-term partnerships. Her extensive background spans business development, strategic accounts, and leadership training, making her a very trusted advisor in recruitment and talent strategy, and an all-around wonderful human being because I've gotten the chance to meet her in person and get to know her a little bit better since we're both here in the Bay Area. Really excited to have this conversation today with Kristen Revell. Hi, Kristen. It's great to see you. Another podcast host here today, and a very warm welcome to the A World of Difference podcast.
Thank you for having me, Lori. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited too. It was really fun to be with you in some of the How Women Lead things not long ago. We were both here in the Bay Area, and we both care about making a difference in the world in different ways, and we love traveling. So we're going to talk about a lot of that today because we have a lot of intersection, both related to your 2 podcasts that you host as well as the work that you do. But out the gate, I wanted to kind of ask you, what was it about you maybe growing up that led you to be the kind of person who likes to travel? Was there something in your childhood? Would little Kristen have known that you were going to be a person who traveled the world like you do?
I always wanted to travel. I think the bigger thing was my stepmom worked for American Airlines and my brother's a pilot. And they travel, I mean, she would travel 9 months out of the year everywhere. And then my brother, being a pilot, he was actually a Gulfstream jet pilot. So he would fly all over the world and send me postcards. So actually, when I graduated college, I was going to stay in through hostels and go for 3 to 6 months or something like that. And then unfortunately the trip didn't happen. I went to Sweden, though I'm Swedish, so I got to go to Sweden, but my travel partner, my girlfriend, she had to pull out last minute. And so my grandparents were funding and they said, well, we're not just going to send you to go all over the world by yourself, which I totally would have done actually. And so I've just had the itch ever since.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that when you grow up with people in your life that are traveling or you experience it as a child, it sort of becomes normal and enticing for a lot of people. You do host a couple podcasts. You host Curiosity with Kristen and Where Next. It's about travel with you and Carol. So share a little bit about the mission behind these two podcasts and what you're trying to accomplish with them.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. So Curiosity with Kristen was called The Future of Women at Work. The whole thing started basically when I was laid off after 24 years with my company. I was laid off March 2020, right at COVID. My then husband was laid off April 2020 after 17 years. So with 2 teenagers at home, I just couldn't sit still. So I thought, I'm going to just create my own. And I'm still an executive recruiter. So I launched my own, but I had also gone to Cuba with our mutual friend, Julie Castro Abrams from How Women Lead in 2018. When I was there, they were all asking, why, you should do your own thing. And so I decided I was going to do my own thing, but I was terrified. So I just wanted to have uplifting conversations about such a huge transformation. So every Friday from 12 to 1, I just wanted to talk to someone that I went to Cuba with and anyone else that I met, just to inspire and help lift up folks who are also going through huge transitions in their life, just to get the mojo to keep going. And so I started taping those calls, wanting to launch it, and it was called The Future of Women at Work. And then it morphed into Curiosity with Kristen. And then I got connected through my girlfriend 6 months later on a Christmas card. And she had wanted to launch a travel podcast of living and working anywhere in the world. And of course, during COVID, we couldn't do that. So it was just it was so inspiring to just listen to all these people from all different ages, all over the world, and then learning their story about how they grew up and what made them who they are today, and then also where they're going and how they were traveling, slow travel mostly. So you got to really learn from a different perspective. It's not like, going to the Eiffel Tower when you go to Paris. It's really like living in Paris. Like, what is that like? And from so many different aspects. So it just kind of delved in a lot deeper on both sides. Curiosity with Kristen was in terms of business and transformations and transitions and listening to other folks that have done it, so that it would hopefully give someone just a lot of ideas and, knowing that they're not alone. And then the Where Next one, just some great ideas on not only different places that you can kind of pick, look at we've got 75 plus at least launched at this point, but all the different locations. But any of the episodes are really fascinating about listening to why, or how they are traveling, what put them in that position. We've had so many different people, some of which they've rented out their houses and they're kind of long-term traveling, and then some that are just going for 3 to 6 months.
So fascinating. Yeah, there's so many different ways people do the whole expat thing. It's sometimes temporarily. They have these digital nomads now in a lot of places. There's a lot of countries giving those visas. COVID certainly shook things up because remote work was a thing before, but it's certainly a bigger thing now in some ways. And
yeah.
So the intersection of you experiencing people's lives vicariously through this travel podcast and hearing about how they're living in these different places and traveling to them, as well as your what you've now started to help people as a recruiter, with your own business, your own recruiting business. If somebody came to you and sort of wanted advice because they were aspiring to maybe an executive position, expat related overseas, do you ever give advice to people about moving abroad? Is that something that you're involved in? And what would you say to people if they were considering that?
So funny, there's a podcaster I think she's a YouTuber, honestly, and that's her job is she actually, I can't remember her name, so maybe I'll get it for you, coaches people who are expatting and how to find housing and how to live kind of thing. I thought it was really interesting. She was a guest on the other podcast. Yeah, I actually think her name was Kristen maybe, but I can't remember right now. I have to look it up. But advice for... so just so I got the question clear, someone who wants to be an expat someone who's an executive or just any position, like an executive?
Maybe an executive position overseas, because there's some positions overseas. My experience of being an expat myself is you might go, but they might not cover schooling for your kids. And so some of the more robust positions would have like an expat package related to it, and is more doable for people. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was one person, well, she's actually working at a university overseas. I can't remember which country, but that was really interesting. And so she's kind of, her kids are there, she's there, and it's the university or where she's working in education. It's like its own city, and it has everything on campus for her kids to go to school, for even groceries, everything was on site, and they all spoke English. And then outside of that area, they did not. But advice wise, let's see. I guess it would depend on, do you have a job and they're asking you to move? Or if you don't have a job, but you're looking for that kind of move, how would you position yourself in doing that? I would say, if the company's moving, then I'm sure they've got some resources, and maybe you can start talking to people over there on just connecting on what it looks like, although maybe you don't have the time and you just have to go. There's that. But if you don't know yet, and you just want to go, it's funny. One of my clients right now, she's a VP, and I'll call it supply chain, but I don't know if that's exactly it. But she is right now, her husband's retired and she wants to still work. She's still pretty young. I think she's probably around, I'm 50, early 50s. I think she's about maybe the same, or maybe she's younger. I think she may be in late 40s or so. And she is traveling all over the world. And she's sending me pictures. Actually, I just got that, we were texting this morning because I want to have her on my podcast just to share how she navigated that, she's going to some Kazakhstan, some really interesting countries, and her experience, and they're big cyclists. So she's, biking through all that. She did have a fully remote job, so it was kind of backwards. So she's fully remote, working for a company here, but traveling all over the world right now with her husband and her dog. And their 2 bikes, I guess, as well. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but if you don't have a job and you want to position yourself, if you know first, I guess if it was me, if I identified maybe the top 3 countries I want to go to, and then what are the big companies that are in those, and start looking at jobs, start going on LinkedIn, start connecting with those people and just talking with them and seeing, who are the players? Do they know of someone in those areas? And that's probably how I'd start initially, and then kind of go from there.
Great advice. Great to hear your perspective, both as somebody who understands the world and traveling and has friends, working remotely and traveling and all that, and then also just generally how to get a job. So is your advice for somebody who's looking for a job just in their own, not trying to move, if they're just in their own city? Say somebody here in the Bay Area is, they do have a job, but they're just looking for their next opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe they're in a mid-sized company and they want to be in a more global company, a bigger company, or that kind of thing. Is that generally similar to your advice that you just gave, or is there anything different there that you would say to people?
Initially, to start, the same advice, where you would just kind of, do some research. Crunchbase is a great resource but also just Google. Googling, I know I use the San Francisco Book of Lists that has a ton of different companies, and then you could chat GPT, who are the competitors of these, and kind of find out companies in the area, what companies like this industry are global, and see if you can't just get lists. If you were looking globally, or if you were looking just for your next job here, start first. I would say step back and find out great if you're working and you can do this, but sometimes it's harder when you're working, and it's easier when you're not working because you have the time, depending on if you have the finances. Is really stepping back. And I do this with my clients. It's what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What's your why? Why are you doing this? And what is it that you want to accomplish in 1, 3, 5, 10 years? What's your projection? And then just looking at companies in that space. And then I would also do research. 90% of any job's personality and chemistry. So diving into, look at LinkedIn and kind of in that area, who are the people in that area? What's their backgrounds? How long have they been there? Is there a lot of turnover at that company? Because I think people get really, really excited about, yes, I get to work at that company, but they don't do the homework behind the scenes on why is there turnover, or what's the culture of the company, and does that fit with the growth that you want? I think that there's sometimes a lot of conflicts, and you think it's like, it's like a shiny new car and a relationship or whatever it is, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, wait a minute, you're hoping for a long-term fit. So just spending the time up front. I mean, working with recruiters like myself is a great way. A lot of times I do a lot of the back end calling to find out. Like this week, I was working with a client on one of his executive roles, and I happened to take someone out to lunch that I knew that worked at the company with this other person, and I just wanted a backdoor reference, and just to get more understanding of like, how would this person lead to grow this company to $1 billion? Like, that's their goal, and they're at 50 million right now. So there's going to be a lot of need from this person. And so just, again, stepping back, getting those questions for yourself first on, maybe just journaling, writing, narrowing that down. What kind of, their kind of industries are big. I know everyone's into AI and everything, but even solar, EV, high tech, there's a lot of kind of quote unquote boring industries that are really doing great. I know healthcare, government, I'm working with a medical device company right now. There's a lot there. So sometimes, it's really about the people and the opportunity that is even sometimes more important than the industry, because I do know people at the fun industries that are miserable. They're working like insane hours, 60 to 80 hours, and they have no time to breathe. So if that's what you want, because you really want to be with that company, then definitely know that in advance. Definitely know that that's what you're going to get and have, and make sure that that fits for your family, because if not, then it's not just you that's paying the price. It's your wife or husband, your kids, your lifestyle, your fitness, your health, your sleep. To me, after 24 years at a company, when I had to create my company, took a lot of time to kind of figure out like, okay, what is it that I'm creating and what's important to me? And I literally took a blue index card and I wrote, number 1 is my health and fitness. And number 2 it's at my other office, so I don't have it right in front of me, but number 2 is family, and number 3 is work. And number 4, I do some other things, but I think even 2 is part podcast or something, like some other things that aren't work first. And I was going to give it 1 year and see what happened, and hope for the best. And I am in best shape. I sleep, I eat well, I do a trainer I'm working out every morning. So like, I flipped the script on how people work, because I am able to do that with what I do. And that was really important too. It's like, depending on the career and lifestyle that you're looking for and what's your long-term goals, and then they can adjust. I've been doing it almost 5 years. I think I'm going to change a few things this coming up year for 2025, but that's the beauty of it. It can morph and change, but at least I know, like, when my kids need something or something comes up, I do look at my blue index card or mentally also, and be like, oh, that my kids come before my work for me at this point right now in my life. I chose that, but then I also know I can, work at night and, catch up, which I do. So it doesn't tend to be a problem.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people around the world will relate to this. We're doing this podcast from here in the U.S. in Silicon Valley, which is worldwide famous for a lot of good things. But one of the things we are not known to be good at is caring for ourselves and our families and our relationships in the midst of work. Tend to ask each other, what do you do? Instead of like, who are you? And, what is your family name? And what are your ancestors like? We don't lead with that like some other cultures do. And even the way we do business can be very like short and sweet, get it out there. Whereas a lot of places around the world, business is big meals around tables with, going on, excursions together and getting to know each other. And it's more relational. And so these are the things that, especially in Silicon Valley, we're known for having to kind of fight for ourselves. Yeah. Even time off, we're not known for, even though there's unlimited PTO in a lot of these companies, we often don't take it. And Europeans are like, wait, what? Why?
No. It's crazy. 2 things I would mention on that is, first off, don't you notice, especially here, is is when you ask someone, how you doing? I'm so busy. And that's okay. Like, why is that okay? It's like,
Right.
you're so busy. Great. That's so great to hear. I mean, that's like typically the answer I always kind of hear on that side. And then there was one other thing I was going to say, but we'll talk about, we'll keep talking and it'll come up with.
Maybe it'll come to you. How
Yeah.
about, like, there's a lot of conversations. We were talking a little bit before we started the recording about AI, and that's like, it's the big thing, and there's a lot of that going on here, and it's so helpful for me both as a podcaster and in the work I do in talent development. There's some really excellent tools out there that are really helping us do this job better. To give us more time to be human and have that human side. What are you seeing as a recruiter with a business? How do you, when people come to you and, mention particular companies, are there ones that you just sort of know aren't what they seem when it comes to treating people like human beings? And how do you navigate that as a recruiter when people are trying to find a place that's going to be somewhat healthy for them to work in?
Absolutely. And I remembered what I remembered, but I'll answer your question first.
Sure.
So, no, I would say absolutely no, because I get all those calls, and mostly the calls of companies that aren't treating people well are the ones I hear about. I get those calls where they're like, please get me out of here. And it's either, the board, the CEO. I mean, again, culture and how you treat someone and making them feel valued and heard and recognized goes such a long way. And so when I am working, I've filled positions at those companies that are a challenge, and I'm very direct because that person's going to find out and they need to know what they're getting into. It's not about a fee. I've done this 28 years, it has nothing to do with the money. I mean, it does because I have to live, but when someone is, trying to see if and evaluate that this is the right position, I go pretty deep in terms of, like I did for this lunch this week, to find out more information about how this person's going to act at this company and, the background and things. Because you do need to know, what you're getting into. And so, I mean, I'm very direct. I do references. I talk to both sides very directly in the sense of like, here's the strengths, here's the weaknesses. This is what, will this work? Because it's going to come up. Whether you do it, but as a recruiter, it's your responsibility. I take it very serious. So, just have very direct calls and very open calls. And then I do feel like I'm very solutions oriented. So, for example, the two companies I just placed they're C-level people. Funny enough, both companies, one has a co-founder that's just very difficult. And there's turnover. There's not some turnover in some areas. And I think it's more fear than anything. But, that person kind of talked with this person. It was actually a VP people that I was placing too. So she has her hands full. I was very direct about that. And then we kind of talked about a strategy of what that next 3, 6, 9, that first year is going to look like, the 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. And, some ideas on, what you can do to, make it work for you. And there was a lot of really good things too about that company specifically. I mean, the CEO, he's amazing. So it wasn't like all horrible, but some challenges. So just knowing what the challenge is in advance is really helpful. And then the other one we worked through as well. It was an investment CFO who is really awful to the first interview, but it's almost like you have to earn his respect and trust before. He doesn't just give it out initially. And so, working through that and being really direct and not blindsided, and then having conversations with that person and kind of like really being very open. And then I also suggested, actually, I have some friends who are business coaches and can help the company because they're looking to really scale a lot in I think, short amount of time. So bringing on, a coach to help with emotional intelligence and partnering and cross-functional teams. And so I know people to help them get through that. And then there was another person, interesting, which will tie into the thing I was going to say that I forgot. But one of my candidates, he came from such a toxic company that, and so I have a job for him, and it was such a toxic company that he was so burnt out. He was working over 60 hours a week too, that he really loves the job that I have. The CEO also was like create your dream job. Let's make this happen. Because he does have a unique skill set, and they really both like each other. But he's so burnt out. He's actually he left with 2 weeks notice, and now he's taking time off, which I could sense. He was kind of struggling while I was talking to him, and I said, you need time off. I can hear it in your voice. So why don't you take a month off, and then we'll, start you next month. And then he thought about it more, and it's like, I need more time than that. And so the CEO is like, take 2 months off. And so then it's in the winter time right now. I don't know when someone's listening to this. And he wants to go to Spain, Portugal, and Italy, and he wants to go on a sailboat. And so he's like, well, I want to go in March. And right now it's December, and so it's too cold. So I had also talked to him about, then why don't you take a little time off now? You need a month, and then come back and work a little bit, and then take your time off, and then work. And then you're going to be working. And he's still thinking about it. He just is so burnt out. So you see, like, burnout. I mean, I know I've seen that in my life before. I've seen it when I'm talking with folks, when, it helps if you have some savings and you can, live. Because sometimes if you don't have that, you have to jump right back in and, go take hikes and walks, or, some mental breaks so that you can kind of keep going. But, that can be really tricky. There's so many different, scenarios, I would say, that, what to see. I also, did I answer? I think I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I'm thinking about people who've probably experienced burnout. We have a lot of people that work, in kind of the NGO space, like maybe disaster relief, or, long-term community development situations, like bringing water in places in Africa, or maybe they have like a job with the UN, and, that could be a war zone. And then we also have people that work in business globally, whether it's here in Silicon Valley or in Singapore or London. And so I think people can relate. People that are difference makers often wear a lot of hats, and they're doing a lot of things, and their jobs are usually whatever industry they're in, they're passionate about them. And so some people say, you won't burn out if you're passionate, but that's not been my experience of people I've seen. Sometimes being so passionate means you neglect yourself because you're like, this work is so important. So I think that as you're helping people, so there might be somebody who feels stuck in a particular role right now. Maybe it's the golden handcuffs of being in a big company that, pays them well, gives them a good package, or it could just be a job where they find it really meaningful, but they're not doing well. And they're trying to look for a company that maybe is a company that's known to be good for women and having, good maternity leave and paternity leave and that kind of thing. How would you suggest somebody start to look beyond just the companies that get recognized as the top ones for women? Because sometimes maybe those we don't know if there's smoke and mirrors there sometimes. How would somebody go about finding out whether a company is going to be good for them and a culture fit?
Well, and funny, I'll answer your question, but I literally am talking to, I think 2, if not 3 in the last week with, a little bit of difference part of them going into the company. They love the boss, and then the boss leaves. You just can't plan it. You know what I mean? So you get in and you've interviewed, because my first thing would be like, go with your gut, talk to the person, get references, make sure that you really can grow and learn, and, that works. But then that person, above with something, maybe this is my experience right now, is that they're not connected with the board, and it's becoming too much of an issue. So they want to leave, and another one where the company was sold and they let go of upper management, and I placed in, kind of a big 4 CPA accounting manager / assistant controller. And so they let everyone go, but they were going to keep him, and they kept him, and then they just let him go, just out of the blue. He had no idea, because they can, we're in California and it's like more expensive. And, he was kind of blindsided a little bit too. So there's so much movement. I guess you just have to, try your best. And if you, again, we can't control everything. We can just control what we can control. And that is to do your, when you're doing your references in terms of the person and who they are, and, how long have they been there, and also the management above them, and what are the outcomes? Are they looking to sell the company or do something where they're poised? Do they have PE and VC backing? Just kind of diving into that a little bit, asking them directly, what's your career path look like? Are you happy? You can just be very direct. Where do you see for me in the future? I mean, the one thing is, if people leave sometimes and oftentimes you get an opportunity to step into either a bigger role or their role or something. There are, out of those unfortunate circumstances, there can be some good outcomes, and maybe you were ready or maybe you aren't ready. I've seen both as well. So I would say, just do your best in terms of when you're talking to your hopeful, boss in the future, that you just kind of make sure that you can get a good feel from them. You can ask and talk to their peers when you're interviewing and get an idea from them. Check on longevity of how long people have been there, and what are the goals of the company, short-term, long-term, and just kind of take a leap of faith at that point, I guess, on what. And then sometimes it's hard because if you're like the breadwinner or the only person working, and it's so important, if you're wanting growth in your company and you're not getting it, and you're taking a leap of faith and then the position doesn't last. I've talked to a ton of people like that too, and you just have to just keep going and just keep interviewing, and again, reaching out to recruiters and reaching out to other folks who you can network with and meet. I always suggest going into LinkedIn to people in roles that either are your boss or someone else, and to companies, and just linking into them, trying to go to lunch, trying to have a conversation with those and seeing if they know someone. Good people tend to know good people. So if you're talking with someone who's got a good network and you like working with them, and then they refer you someone, most likely it'll be also a good person.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I think that so much of like getting a job or getting a board seat, as we know, is people and so that really is helpful. Maybe this is my kind of last big question for you, and then I'm going to do some kind of rapid fire with you a little bit, just for fun.
Absolutely.
This question is, I think, for those who've never used a recruiter before and kind of want to know what that process looks like.
Sure.
So if somebody is looking for their next role and they want to consider, utilizing the services of a recruiter, what does that process look like for them and for you?
Yeah. And it's funny. I'm like, I hope I cover it all. And if not, I know sometimes I've Googled that to see what it says, but I'll try my best. I think, and I've heard both. I'll just speak on who I am and go from there, because you can have good recruiters, bad recruiters, and also another thing is you're not stuck with a recruiter. It's not like you're paying them or they're paying you to stay with them. So if you feel like you're not getting the level of service or the connection with them, especially the connection, keep looking. You can still, there's so many companies, so many different, people that you can talk with, big companies, small companies, whatever. So what I've typically done, they've reached out to me, they've sent their resume, they've done a little homework in terms of, just in terms of companies that they're interested in and what they're looking for. So I just have an idea, and then I personally spend an hour with each person I meet, and I walk through their resume to understand, all of their background. How many years were they at? Industries, public, private, who they reported to, did they have any subordinates, or who their peers were, the systems they've used. And I just kind of chronologically go all the way up just to better understand. Look at their degrees. I'm always curious, like someone comes from, paleontology and they're in accounting or whatever it is, just something totally different. Like, why did you do that?
Change careers. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating and fun to hear so many interesting stories about what they started in their career and what they ended up with and what their passions are and what they really, what really lights them up. And then we go through an ideal, like what is it what would be your ideal position? A location, industry, salary, position, size company, just kind of work through all of that. And then whatever other questions come to mind for me. And then I always ask them, what are their top 3 most important things in their next role? After you've talked through all this, we've gone through your resume, what is it, your 3 things that it has to be? And so that's how I have a certain way of doing, that. And then we talk about companies, we talk about positions. I reach out to my network. I send over, a profile of them or their resume to specific clients in my network as well, to just see if I can generate positions, which it does generate positions. I actually had one that is for a CFO, and he said, no, I've got my CFO, but I need a COO. And so I found them someone that way. So it does generate maybe, not for that person, but for someone else I can help with them. But with a recruiter, also, some people want to keep in touch with me all the time. Weekly, that's fine. Monthly, that's fine. Also, if you're not working or working, that can be, also a part of that decision. And then I'm personally really great at text. Phone and email are fine too. So I always ask, which is the best way to connect with you. And then, you just it's personalized depending on the person and their schedule and what they're doing. But you should have a connection with your recruiter. You should feel very comfortable talking with them. It's almost kind of like a friend, like someone that you can really share. You're sharing a lot of really important, deep stuff. We spend so much time working, more than anything else is working, sleeping, and then, little free time too. But you should be, feel very comfortable that you can share, exactly what you need and feel like you're being heard and feel like, that person values you and that you're getting, good leads. And again, I wish I could place everyone. It would be amazing, but it's now kind of a long-term relationship, whether I place them this time or in 10 years. I've been, again, a recruiter for 28 years, so I keep in touch with those folks. And then, if they also are interviewing at a company, but they want a kind of a backdoor reference, like we were kind of talking about, then I have, call me. Let me see if I know someone at that company. And so I'll do backdoor references for them as they're interviewing, whether it be through another recruiter or on direct, whatever it is, I can, help them with a decision. It's a really important decision for them.
I love how personalized you are with it. It sounds like it really makes a difference. I think that, when you mentioned your own experience of having been laid off here in March 2020 and also your husband soon after, I think that people, especially here in the Bay Area, working in a lot of roles, experience that, because we were the first county in Santa Clara County to shut down. So it happened really fast for a lot of people, especially anything in person related that wasn't essential workers, right? And so, but even if people haven't been both husband and wife laid off in a situation like that, people tend to have known someone who was laid off or been fired. Especially here, we've had a lot of big tech layoffs in the last year. I mean, that kind of thing. You tend to know someone. And they say, as far as, traumatic experiences in your life, it's pretty significant. So coming alongside someone to help them find a way to support their family and put food on the table is in those hierarchy of needs. So you really are making a difference in people's lives. And I love how you're approaching it so personally. Not every culture talks directly about money. It's kind of taboo, like to even mention that. But as far as how money gets exchanged, maybe you want to unpack that for some people, because that may be something that's sort of out there in the air, but they don't understand. They may be thinking, do I pay a bunch of money first, and then, or does it you get paid from the companies when you place someone? That might not be clear to some people.
Yeah, great question. So I don't know in different countries, but here in the US, no one pays. It's the company who pays. So everything is free. And I get a ton of calls also just consulting on their careers and trying to get a promotion. And sometimes if the answer of why they're looking to leave, if they just had a conversation with their boss, maybe it could, give them the promotion or give them things. So I'll give them bullet points on what kind of conversation they need to have with their boss in order to see if they can just stay at their company and go back and forth with that. But yes, so having a recruiter / consultant for you and your career is all free. And then you just pay for you don't pay anything. The client pays. I have seen where there are companies where you do have to pay, and you shouldn't have to pay. Yeah, in any capacity, honestly.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I like that clarity because especially some cultures where they don't talk about that up front, I think it's important to be direct about it when you can.
Yeah.
Just so that, as Brene Brown says, clarity is kindness for people. So, now I'm going to give you a few rapid fire questions.
Okay, and then as you're looking up the rapid fire, I just wanted to circle back about time off. That was what we spoke about and I guess here in the US, I don't know how it is overseas, but that is a big thing where people are afraid to take off work. And then there's unlimited PTO nowadays, but no one takes the PTO.
Right.
And then you feel guilty about it, or your boss is working all the time. And I would just say, depending on your relationship with them too, right? Where you feel like you can approach them or not approach them, just take your vacation. And, it would be great if you can communicate with your boss, but the one person that is needing all this time off. I don't know how much time he took off. I meant to ask that actually, and I don't know if we talked about that, but I just think, holy cow, to be that burnt out. And I honestly, I designed my life when I was at the company for 24 years that I took the month of August off because I wanted to be a mom and spend time with them and travel. And just, that was that was really important to me. I didn't make as much money maybe, but I felt fine because I was commissioned anyway. So it was in my control. But that, and also sabbaticals. If your company does sabbaticals, take them. I think sabbaticals are just amazing. I personally took my quote unquote own sabbatical in 2002 when I went to Costa Rica for a month and just backpacked and learned so much. It was such an amazing break. And just when I was there and back, like the sense of just newness and refreshed and being able to then come up with all these ideas. I mean, I just notice when I take time off or I'm doing something, I am thinking about work. It's kind of integrated with my life, but it's in a more, it's a great kind of package deal, I guess, because I get to work out. I think of candidates. I don't know, ideas come to my mind. There is something about having your amygdala versus your lizard brain working for you. And, when you're in a positive light and the prefrontal cortex, that's it, is thinking, then you're coming up with ideas. But if you're overworked, exhausted, and your amygdala is on fire, you're not thinking of great solutions. And so if you feel that way, you need, whether it be time, take a vacation, sabbatical, go and take a class, learn something. I used to volunteer at some boards and take evening classes. I've done Stanford continuing education classes online, and I just think that they're invaluable for you as a human and for your mental health, but it also helps with your career depending on, what you do. So wake surf on the side for fun and compete, and I do events. That's sort of my fun hobby. Just having an outlet that makes you say hell yeah 5 times a day. That was actually, so on that blue index card at the bottom of it, it says say hell yeah 5 times a day. Just something that makes you get excited. I just try to focus always on that, and things all work out.
I love that. I said something similar to, your description of how travel really helps people innovate, which is why, for my own team and then, the work that I do in talent development for a global company based here, is I'm constantly telling people that, like, to be human means time off. It means, I'm usually saying this more intensely, not to our European offices, but to our Silicon Valley and our Asian offices. And because those cultures, tend to overvalue the time you spend in the office at the expense of sometimes your humanity in corporations. And so it's just one of those things, who you're speaking to. But even in our own family budget, when we budget for family trips, it also intersects with education because we're taking our kids to new countries to show them new places and explore a little of the history while we're there. But it also, people always talk about they get the best ideas in the shower. And I think that's true. But more than a shower is what if you're in the ocean, or what if you're in, Cancun and you're seeing this beautiful view, and there's so much inspiration that happens both from eating new foods and seeing how people live. And there's a lot of research around it, just getting out of town, that can improve your mental health and give you, just like you're explaining with the lizard brain and all that. So I love that. So good. All right. So we're going to do some quick questions.
Sounds good.
All right. What's your favorite travel destination so far and why?
Oh gosh. Oh boy. I initially wanted to say Costa Rica because I really, really want to go back, 2002. But in 2022, 20 years later, I went to South Korea and Bali, and we only got to spend a weekend in Bali. It was awful. It was too short, but I want to go back to Bali, and Bali was just amazing.
Yes, love Bali. Because I lived in Indonesia 10 years. And then also when I was in Singapore the next 10 years, our family would usually take annual trips to Bali. And my kids learned to surf there. And it's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice.
Too.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, it's so awesome.
Yeah,
all right. Name
so
one dream
fun.
guest you'd love to have on each of your podcasts.
Oh my gosh. Wow. On each of my
just ask
podcasts.
Anybody today and they'd say yes. Who would it be?
Yeah. What's so funny is I don't know why. And maybe she was just on a feed or something. Melinda Gates. Would love to.
Love her.
Mm-hmm. That would be, I guess I could have her do both because she's just seen so much in terms of countries and travel.
That's true.
So I'll say, just for ease of, but I am going to be thinking now a little bit more of what I think of, because there's some great ones.
She's amazing. I donate to her foundation. It's split off from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She's been giving all this money to women around the world to fund their efforts. So even more so that I feel really good about giving to her organization because she's doing a good job with it. Window or aisle seat when traveling?
Window. I love the window.
Me too. I like to see.
My first
If
choice.
you could live in one place you visited, where would it be?
Oh gosh. Well, oh my gosh, because it's with my kids and things. I guess the quick answer, it would be, because I really want to live on a lake. So I would say Bass Lake, but it was too small when I wake surfed. So I was like, I need to find another one. And Lake Tahoe's too small. So I need to do a little work, but I do like California. I would love to live on a lake. I could say Maui because I have a condo in Maui and I know there's wake surfing there. But right now I'd love pine trees and mountains. That's a little warmer. That is on a lake. So I guess I'll have to do, but you said a place that I've been before. I'll just say Lake Tahoe. Make it easy.
So nice. Yeah. We were just there for Thanksgiving and it was so snowy and the snowstorm had already passed. The big bomb cyclone that we got here, they got snow. But we were just there and got the cozy cabin and some of us went skiing. The other ones just stayed by the fireplace. Lake Tahoe is so beautiful. Well, it's been great to have you on. Thank you so much for your insights, both when it comes to careers and recruiting and to travel and podcasting. I will have you hang out with our difference makers in our Patreon community and ask you one more question there. But for this conversation, I just want to say thank you. How can people find you and reach out to you if they want to know more about your work?
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I want to say this is my first interview, and it's just a blast to be able to do this with you. So to find me, thank you for asking that. So Kristen Revell, KristenRev, like Victor, ELL on LinkedIn. Probably the best way to reach me would be that. And then Kristen at therevellgroup.com, but you'll see it on my LinkedIn profile. It's the best way to find me.
Thank you so much for the difference you're making, and thanks for being on the show today, Kristen.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and can't wait to talk more after this.
That's right.
I really enjoyed hearing not only about Kristen's career journey and how she overcame obstacles with a lot of resilience that ended up in her building something that benefits so many others by really connecting great talent to great organizations and bringing in her own career journey with compassion and foresight and the ability to help people walk through a journey from one job to the next, because not only did she have a career at Robert Half where she did that, but now with her own business, the Revell Group, she's very much doing this in a way that she owns, that she has brought her own career and life experiences into, and with so much tailor-made process for each individual. She really wants to get to know people. And I can just, as a person who's been around her, both in this interview and in person where we met at How Women Lead here in the Bay Area, she is certainly the kind of person that's listening well, wants to get to know the people that approach her and to partner with them to find an organization where they can really contribute and make a difference, and where she has relationships with a lot of different companies and organizations that are looking for that next person. And the work that she does, it really does make a difference, because there's ways to do that work and there's ways to do that work. And the way I've experienced her doing it is really so full of human kindness and not just treating people as a project or a tool to get something done, but really getting to know people and caring about people. I think her love of travel and the experiences of the culture that has formed and raised her, and, you know, just understanding kind of where her family background comes from and all the things that form her as a person was something I really enjoyed getting to know about, and I hope you did too. She is certainly the kind of person that has faced obstacles in life and in career and is very real and honest and vulnerable about how that was not easy, but that, you know, waking up and walking through that, feeling through it. It's not easy to walk through what we all went through with the COVID pandemic, but when you take job loss on top of that, the job loss of a spouse while you're raising, you know, children and have bills to pay, it's significant. And she brings that history into her journey, and she brings that history into the work that she does, where she really is doing the kind of work where it is so difficult when people get laid off. We've seen that a lot over the last few years here in Silicon Valley and different tech companies, but I know many of you might have experienced that, and it's not easy to walk through. And so having somebody take your hand and say, we can get to the next thing together and find that good fit for you is really so special. And it's the kind of person we all need at different times in our lives to help us walk from one thing to the next, to overcome that obstacle, especially when it's very hard to do. And her own lived experience gives her the knowledge and understanding of what that can be like in a way that allows her to bring that into the work that she does of helping great organizations find great talent and matching those two up in ways that she is just really great at. So really excited to introduce her to you. If you didn't know about her already, please check out her 2 podcasts. We will link those in the show notes. One is about travel, which we also talk quite a bit about here on A World of Difference, and all the places that have formed you and the places you like visiting. And then also in the area of business and recruiting and the work that she does is kind of more the theme of her other podcasts. So check both of those out. And also, if you want to reach out to her for more information, we'll link her information in the show notes. In the meantime, I have talked a little bit about this before, but next week on the show, we're going to have the president and founder of How Women Lead, which is the organization which I met Kristen with, and also Dr. Edie Goldberg, who was on the podcast last week. And it's an organization I've recently just started to get a bit involved with. It's both has in-person events here in the Bay Area and in other places around the U.S. and Chicago and New York and different locations. But I really, really enjoyed getting to know different women through this organization. Recently got to attend our winter party in San Francisco at the War Memorial Building Green Room and get to speak there a little bit about what I envision for next year, some of the hopes and dreams I have for next year. And one of those, I would say, is that we start to really understand that there is so much unpaid labor that women are expected to do at home, in our communities, in our school PTAs, and our faith-based spaces, and even very unpromotable and unpaid labor in our workspaces. And so I would hope in the next year, we would really start to flip that we start to recognize the invisible work that a lot of women do that we don't pay them for, and start to change that system to honor the work that women do. And all around the world, not just here in California and the United States, but that's something globally that we should start to pay attention to. So that's something you're going to hear a little bit more about from me and guests that we bring on the show in the next year. One of the many topics we like to cover where we're making a difference in the world. And I recently was given the great honor and very unexpected of being asked to be on the board of How Women Leads. Even prior to that, I wanted to bring Julie Castro-Abrams on the show, but I'm really excited to bring her voice to you next week. She is an amplifier of women's voices. She has set a credo at How Women Lead for us to be the kind of people that amplify the voices of women, that we help women be unabashedly visible by we ourselves being unabashedly visible. And that's always quite the hard one because of all the likability issues that can bring. And if you know, you know. But also just she's really changing the game in terms of how women invest. And we're going to have a lot of conversations around the work that she has been doing with How Women Lead. And since I've been invited very recently on the board at the Silicon Valley Executive Board for How Women Lead, I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you because it is really a space that I'm finding bringing lots of light, both into my life and to the life of other women around me that I've invited into the space and gotten to know there. Really excited for you to tune in next week for listening to Julie Castro-Abrams, founder and president of How Women Lead. And in the meantime, if you have questions about this conversation when it comes to talent development and recruiting and any of the things that Kristen, Revell, and I spoke about today, feel free to reach out anytime. And as always, we have a small little mini-sode with her that's very exclusive where I ask her to go a little more deep about some of her experience that has led her to where she is. And she really does go a little bit deeper with us there in a very special and vulnerable way. So please check that out. You can go to www.patreon.com/aworldoftdifference to check out that exclusive episode not available anywhere else where we go a lot deeper with Kristen. And she's just a wonderful human being. I really enjoy getting to know her, and I know you'll get to enjoy that little mini-sode there too. So check us out. And if you haven't joined yet in that difference maker community, this is a great time to do it. Basically, we have a lot of extra content there. There'll be opportunities to speak into polls. You'll get to interact with the different episodes there in a special way, and a lot of extra content there. So please check us out at www.patreon.com/aworldoftdifference and keep making a difference wherever you are.